Hello, this is Dr. Eric Bricker, and thank you for watching AHealthcareZ. Today's topic is hospital CEO compensation. Now, are hospital CEOs in America bad people? No, of course not. Emphatically no. But are the financial incentives for CEOs in America bad for patients? Potentially. Let's examine that today. So, there have been multiple reports that show that the increased revenue of a hospital system correlates with the increased overall total compensation for the CEO. And typically the CEO compensation comes in the form of their base salary plus a bonus. And that bonus typically represents about 33% of their total compensation. So if there's a correlation between the increased hospital revenue and the CEO total compensation, well then let's look at that broken down by specific bands of hospital revenue. So for hospitals with less than $50 million a year in revenue, then their total CEO compensation on average was $274,000 per year. For hospitals with 50 to 100 million a year in revenue, their average CEO compensation was $351,000 per year. For hospitals with 100 million to 250 million in revenue, their average CEO compensation was $528,000. For hospitals with 250 million to 500 million in revenue, it was $701,000. For hospitals with 500 million to $1 billion a year in revenue, it was $960,000. And for hospital systems with greater than $1 billion a year in revenue, their average CEO compensation was $1.4 million per year. Okay, that's total compensation. So you can see here that the CEO of a $1 billion plus hospital system is making almost 6 times as much as the CEO of a hospital system with less than 50 million in revenue. Okay, so obviously the number of employees that a large hospital system has, the number of hospitals that a large system has, the number of clinical areas or departments that large hospital system has, if it has ASCs, it has ambulatory surgery centers, it has multiple sites. So the complexity of these large hospital systems is much greater, arguably, than the complexity of these smaller hospital systems. So there is obviously a direct correlation not only between the overall revenue, but one might argue the complexity of these smaller hospitals is not nearly as complex as these larger hospitals. Okay, so that's the total compensation. But now let's look specifically at the bonuses. Now, is the bonus structure for a hospital CEO solely based upon the financial performance of the hospital? No, it is not. There are a variety of inputs that go into a CEO's bonus, and they include financial performance, but then also patient satisfaction, clinical quality, the safety of the clinical care, and employee satisfaction. Obviously, that's been a big deal with so many nurses being unhappy and leaving their jobs. So in fact, now, what percentage of the bonus is based on each one of these 5 factors? Well, that's not typically publicly released because hospital systems hire compensation consultants. And the mix of these various bonus factors is sort of part of the proprietary consulting information of these compensation consultants that hospital systems hire. So it's a combination of things. Now, of course, one of the things that we talk about a lot here on AHealthcareZ is value-based payments, or revenue that's at risk because either of capitated payments from the government or from an insurance carrier, or it's based upon, or the revenue itself is based upon quality as determined by, let's say a Medicare score or what have you. So, interestingly, value-based payments and payments that are based on risk, they did a survey of CEOs and hospital CEOs, and just over half, 51% of those hospital CEOs said that 0% of their bonus was based on value-based payments or revenue that came in as a result of risk-based payments. So that shows that many hospitals have not specifically carved out value-based payments and risk-based payments as a specific mechanism for financially incentivizing CEOs. Still, the overall largest correlation that you can see here is between hospital revenue and CEO compensation. As the hospital revenue goes up and the complexity goes up, the CEO compensation goes up. So that then begs the question, what makes hospital revenue go up? Well, let's look at the opposite of that first. What makes hospital revenue go down? What types of things could a hospital do to make their revenue go down? Okay, treating uninsured patients makes their revenue go down. No, notice I didn't say for here. It says revenue. It doesn't say number of beds. It doesn't say number of patients seen. It doesn't say various other things. It says revenue. You can take care of uninsured patients that have cancer and cardiovascular disease and also all sorts of medical problems, and that won't necessarily be revenue generating. Okay, taking care of Medicaid patients, not a high revenue generating activity. Taking care of having an inpatient psych ward, taking care of psychiatric patients, not a high revenue generating activity. Taking care of poor patients in general, taking care of poor people, not a high revenue generating activity. Taking care of Medicare patients in general, not a very high revenue, not a high revenue generating activity. So major hospital system in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, building hospitals in various suburbs, and then shutting down hospitals in poor parts of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Okay, hospital in Chicago where I did some of my medical training, shut down its psych ward. Okay, so here the CEO of the hospital is not going to be incentivized to keep open a hospital in a poor neighborhood. The CEO of a hospital is not going to be incentivized to keep open a psychiatric unit. Okay, so they're not. So alternatively, what does increase hospital revenue? Having patients with commercial insurance increases hospital revenue. Having wealthy and middle class patients increases hospital revenue. Having orthopedic services, huge driver of hospital revenue. Cardiovascular services and oncology services, huge drivers of hospital revenue. So we need to understand in healthcare finance how the people at the top of the hospital systems are compensated. Is revenue and is money the only thing that results in bonus payments for hospital CEOs? No, absolutely not. Are CEOs bad people? No, absolutely not. Are CEOs in some degree compensated based upon the overall revenue and size and complexity of the organization, therefore incentivizing the CEO to have a larger, more complex, more high revenue hospital? My interpretation of the data is yes. I'll leave it up for you to decide for yourself. And thank you for watching AHealthcareZ.